Sometimes we believe that speaking is the same as being sincere, trusting, close, but it isn't always so. There are words that once spoken never return. They linger in the memory of those who heard them like an old photograph no one wants to look at again. Yet no one can bring themselves to tear apart. Let me tell you something. There was an afternoon many years ago in my kitchen with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the soft sound of rain tapping against the window, when I opened my mouth more than I should have. I thought I was being transparent, that I was sharing what I felt. But in truth, I was letting out something I had not yet learned to understand. That conversation changed the way they looked at me for a long time, all because I didn't know how to stay silent at the right moment. Have you ever asked yourself whether everything you think deserves to be said, especially within your own family? When we are young, we confuse impulse with courage. We believe that saying everything is a sign of authenticity, that holding nothing back is maturity. But life showed me that prudence is also a form of love. There are things you should never tell your family, not because there is evil in them, but because there are truths that not every heart is ready to hold. The first is resentment you haven't yet healed. I made that mistake. Once, full of exhaustion and pride, I confessed old wounds that even I had not finished understanding. I thought that speaking them aloud would free me, but all I did was sow distance. The words lodged themselves into the silence of the house like invisible nails. Then came the cold days, the sidelong glances, the Sundays that felt longer than usual. Today I understand something I couldn't see before. Not every pain needs witnesses. Sometimes silence is the space where you can transform resentment into understanding before exposing it to the world. I also learned that not every dream needs to be announced ahead of time. Some projects are like delicate seeds. If you expose them to the wind of other people's opinions, they can dry out before they ever sprout. When I was younger, I shared every plan, every hope, every step I wanted to take. I was seeking approval without realizing it. And when other people's doubts mixed with my own fears, I ended up giving up before I even tried. Over the years, I understood that there are decisions that must mature in silence. Not everything needs to be debated at the family table. There are paths one must first walk alone, with inner certainty as the only companion. Listen carefully. Your family loves you, yes, but they also project their fears, and they are not always prepared to hold what you are only just beginning to believe. There is something else I should never have said, an unfair comparison. In a moment of frustration, I let slip words comparing one loved person to another. I did not intend to hurt, but I did. Comparisons are knives wrapped in seemingly innocent phrases. They remain engraved. Years later, I can still see in the eyes of the one who heard that sentence a shadow I never fully managed to erase. Time does not move backward. If I could return, I would measure my words more carefully. Because family is a delicate fabric. One poorly pulled thread can undo part of the embroidery that took years to create. And there is more. Something I learned when the house began to grow quiet. Do not share all your fears before you understand them. There was a season when I felt fragile, afraid of the future, of illness, of loneliness. Instead of seeking serenity within myself, I unloaded that fear onto those around me. I thought it would make me feel accompanied, but what I did was spread anxiety. Family does not always need to know every shadow that crosses your mind. Sometimes what they need is your strength, or at least your attempt at serenity. It's not about pretending. It's about processing first and sharing later, when it is no longer a storm, but a reflection. Over the years, I came to understand that speaking too much is not a small flaw. It is a form of imprudence that can erode bonds without you noticing right away. Words have weight. They accumulate in memory like boxes in an attic. And when you least expect it, someone dusts them off and feels again what they thought they had overcome. I have asked for forgiveness many times. I have embraced with tears in my eyes. I have admitted that I was wrong. But there are sentences I wish I had never spoken. Listen carefully. Trust does not mean stripping every thought bare. Intimacy is not saying everything. It is knowing what to say, when, and how. There are silences that protect. There are reserves that care. Not every secret is betrayal. Sometimes it is simply maturity. Family does not need to know every doubt, every criticism, every passing fear. They need respect, care, and words that build. Today, when I look at my hands full of wrinkles, I understand that time does not only mark the skin, it sharpens awareness. I wish I had learned sooner that a hasty tongue leaves invisible scars. But I do not punish myself. Life is also trial and error. I have learned to stay silent when my heart is unsettled. I have learned to breathe before speaking. I have learned that silence is not emptiness. It is space to think. Let me tell you something with the serenity that only years can give. Before telling your family something, ask yourself whether it will heal or reopen a wound. Ask yourself whether you are speaking from calm or from impulse. Ask yourself whether that truth needs to be said now, or whether it can wait until it matures. Not everything we feel deserves to become immediate words. Some emotions need to rest, like bread before it goes into the oven. If I could go back, I would choose wiser silences and fewer impulsive confessions. I would hold certain complaints until I understood them better. I would protect my dreams until they were stronger. I would avoid comparisons that only feed insecurity. I would process my fears before turning them into burdens for others. But I cannot go back. The only thing I can do is share with you what I learned too late. Family is like an old house. It stands on invisible columns made of respect, patience, and care. One poorly spoken word can crack those columns. And even if the house does not collapse immediately, the cracks remain. I do not speak from theory. I speak from afternoons when I sat alone thinking about what I had said. From embraces that took time to return. From silences that weighed more than any argument. Today I know that the true danger of speaking too much is not the sound of the voice, but the lack of awareness. The real risk is not expressing what we feel. It is doing so without responsibility. Because once words leave, they no longer belong to us. They become someone else's memory. So if you are listening to this and you still have time, guard your tongue as you would guard what is most precious. Speak to unite, not to unload. Speak to build, not to prove that you are right. And when in doubt, when your heart is agitated, when pride wants to take control, choose silence. Not the silence of resentment, but the silence that reflects. In the end, what remains are not the arguments won or the truths spoken harshly. What remains are the looks, the embraces, the peace inside the house. And I tell you this with the honesty of someone who has already walked almost the entire path. Sometimes staying silent at the right time is the deepest form of love.